We need accountability in our country for what happened.
I wear a mask to school. I wear a mask to school.
We turned on one another.
Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo, rest in peace, Wheezy.
And we were encouraged by the people above us.
There's no excuse for anyone being unvaccinated. This continues to be a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
How do you hold the people at the top accountable if they won't even begin by offering the truth?
Dr. Schwartz, do you believe that mRNA vaccines, including the COVID-19 vaccine, are safe and effective?
I do believe that mRNA technology is safe and effective.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But the people at the top, they're not admitting anything. They're doubling and tripling down.
The COVID vaccines, in some people, sadly, result in death.
I took care of those children who came in with myocarditis after the vaccine.
She was seeing between 8 and 12 episodes of anaphylactic shock per day.
The goals of the people that have harmed us were not just to give us shots and injections and lock us down and turn us against one another temporarily. Their objective is complete and total power and control over the population.
Stephanie, who's the mom of Maddie DeGarry, Maddie participated in the Pfizer trial.
It's been over 9 months since she got her second dose. She can't walk. She's in a wheelchair.
Pfizer has to be aware of you. Have they reached out to you since June?
Neither Pfizer, the FDA, or the CDC has ever talked to us or attempted to.
You can't bring back the dead, but you can certainly anoint the truth. And that's what we need to continue to do.
The reactions we're seeing in the hospital with adults are terrifying and they're being ignored. Just some examples of post-vaccine reactions are blood clots, heart attacks, strokes, encephalopathy, heart arrhythmias such as atrial fibrillation.
That event, whatever you want to call it, describe it, between 2020 and 2022, as Dennis Prager likes to say, was nothing more than a dress rehearsal for tyranny.
It's the same we have to apply now on a global level. As long as not everybody is vaccinated, nobody will be safe.
Back in 1994, in Rwanda, half the country decided to kill the other half. Over a period of about 100 days, somewhere between 500,000 to 800,000 people were hacked to death by machetes. They were hacked to death by machetes within one tribe. In other words, the people turned against one another for no other reason than their neighbors were part of a different tribe than they were. This massacre should have wrecked the country for the rest of history. But a Truth and Reconciliation Commission was formed within 10 years to help to bring those two people back together, which after a series of trials and a series of public hearings and some imprisonment, the country recongealed and it's now thriving 30 years later. We need accountability in our country for what happened between 2020 and late 2022 to early 2023, and to some degree ongoing. If anything sounds familiar in the story of the Rwandan massacre, the genocide, to what happened here between 2020 and 2022, it shouldn't. It should be quite familiar, perhaps with less violence and fewer machetes. But we turned on one another. We were encouraged to do so for tribal reasons. And we were encouraged by the people above us, by the leadership, which is exactly what happened in Rwanda. A few men decided to gin up some anger and some hatred and some violence, and then the pot just boiled over and it just fed on itself. That's very similar to what happened in this country. It was a kindler, gentler tribalism, but there was still just as much psychological injury as there was physical injury in Rwanda. And we're still feeling the reverberations of that today. It's still ongoing. The reason why accountability is so important is that it's really not possible to move forward with another group of people that are your neighbors, your friends, people that live across the street you go to school with, just like the Rwandans had to do, unless the other side admits that they did something wrong and offers remorse and compensation. It doesn't mean they necessarily have to go to jail. Most of the people that committed the crimes in Rwanda were not jailed. Some were, the leaders were, but not everyone was. It would have been impossible. How do you jail half a country? Well, how do we jail half of the United States? That's 150 million people. That's not really practical or realistic. We should jail the rulers. We should jail those who instigated this, but we may not ever be able to, at least not soon, because they also hold the powers of our justice system and our courts, unfortunately. But that would be something to aspire to. I definitely support the movement to hold the people who conspired to harm our entire country accountable, but I want to caution everyone that we may not achieve that end, at least not soon. We may not be able to achieve what the Rwandans did. And there's a very simple reason for that. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission began with truth and ended with reconciliation. We don't have truth because the people that are committing the wrongs against us today and have been for the last 3 years do not value truth. It is not one of their values. They are, by definition, propagandists. And propaganda is not truth, although it uses the word pravda in Russian, which means truth. But all the Russians know from the former Soviet Union that pravda actually meant lies. So we have a modern-day pravda in our country, which is a cabal between our media, our government, and our bureaucratic institutions, all of whom collude together to provide us with the pravda, or the lies, and then tell us, through gaslighting, when we point out their lies, that we're actually conspiracy theorists. That's what they've been doing now for 3 years, and they continue to do that. So how do you hold somebody accountable? How do you hold institutions, individuals, forgetting about the neighbors and the people that screamed and yelled and ostracized you, that are your colleagues, compatriots, and family and friends? How do you hold the people at the top accountable if they won't even begin by offering the truth? How can you get to reconciliation unless there's truth? Well, you can't really do that. You can't find reconciliation unless there's been truth. And we don't have that today. We might be able to find some accountability through truth and reconciliation with our neighbors. There are some who are now, to their credit, acknowledging that they were wrong. They acknowledge, some of them, that we were right from the very beginning and that they were wrong. They were wrong about the school closures. They were wrong about the masks. They were wrong about the so-called vaccines, which are nothing more than experimental gene therapies, as we've been taught today. Wrong about shutting down businesses. Wrong about dragging women by their hair out of shopping centers because they didn't want to wear a mask when they went to buy their tomatoes. That was a mistake. Well, good for them. At least they're owning up to their mistakes. Maybe they didn't hack anyone to death, but they certainly did go after people in a very cruel and vindictive way, which has caused a lot of psychological harm, as well as physical harm. I've mentioned the harm that was done to children, not just the autism, not just the social delays, the developmental delays. Many of them are ill and sick because they were prevented from breathing freely, from their immune systems from functioning, from now immune system destruction and damage caused by forced injections of toxins that they didn't need, didn't want, could never have helped them and could only hurt them. Now some people are acknowledging, parents, doctors even are acknowledging that they were wrong. And I think that's a step in the right direction. But the people at the top, they're not admitting anything. They're doubling and tripling down. Because if we've learned today, as James Lindsay explained, the problem is not really the issue. The goals of the people that have harmed us were not just to give us shots and injections and lock us down and turn us against one another temporarily. Their objective is complete and total power and control over the population. So why would they ever want to admit that they were wrong? Because it would run against their larger agenda, which is now evolving into transgenderism, it's evolving into eco-terrorism, and God knows what on the future. They can't admit that they were wrong because the whole house of cards would collapse and they wouldn't be able to proceed to the next battle because then they would basically be conceding the war. And they're not going to do that. So what does that leave us with? I think that we need to not only continue to push for accountability for the other side, I think we also need to push for accountability on our side. What I mean by accountability on our side is that we need to continue to assertively preserve the truth of what we said. We need to not agree to move on, agree to get along, agree to accept that the revisionist history, which is now being pumped out by the Faucis and the Burks and the Bill Gateses, is okay. Since this is behind us, we can just let them take back the microphone. Why does it matter now? Remember what Hillary Clinton said years later after her debacle? Many debacles. Why on earth does it matter now? It matters because it's the truth that matters. They don't believe that the truth matters. That's why it doesn't matter to them. But it should matter to us. And that's what differentiates us from them, is that we actually value truth. Even if the past is in the past, as it always is. You can't bring back the dead, but you can certainly anoint the truth. And that's what we need to continue to do. There is not only a philosophical advantage, there's a practical advantage, I think, to doing that. Right now, I see among many people a weakness in their humanitarianism, in their wanting to be nice, in their wanting to reconcile without going through the truth stage. And I think that that is not only not possible, I think it's actually self-destructive. I would actually say it's collusive. If you try to reconcile with a propagandist by bypassing or skipping over the truth, you are not actually doing good. You are actually colluding with the wrong. If we cede the ground to the other side by saying, well, let's just let this stay in the past, let's just move forward, let's just build from now, I think what we're doing is we are ennobling the other side and we are putting ourselves in a weak position, both in terms of our authority now and our also potential authority in the future. There is a misconstrual within, I would say, the general population about the distinction between righteous anger and rage. And a lot of people grow up, not through any fault of their own, living in a household where there's a lot of destructive anger, a lot of rage. Maybe it's alcoholism, maybe it's spousal abuse. And so they start to equate anger with destruction. When my father got angry, he beat my mother. When my mother got drunk, she threw dishes at the windows. So they avoid anger because they don't see anger as being productive. They only see it as destructive. And that often also leads to avoidance of conflict. This is a big mistake. Women in general are conflict avoidant more than men. And this has a purpose in helping to achieve social cohesion and cooperation and positive relationships, but it also can be a weakness, especially when it's taken advantage of and misused and abused by propagandists and liars. They have tried to appeal to the more feminine in the men and the women of America, the humanitarianism, the kindness, the gentleness, the good in us, to pervert it and use it for their nefarious ends. They are trying to tell us, well, you're a good person, you're kind, you're conservative. What are conservative values? Turning the other cheek, forgiving, forgetting, which is sort of true, but not in this instance. We need to hold a more masculine, meaning a more dominant and assertive and angry, perhaps, position, as opposed to one of appeasement, of kindness, of gentleness, of forgiveness, of patience, the more feminine side. And I'm using these terms in a very general way. Obviously, people are mixed, and there's men and women who are not exactly the same, and more men and masculine and more women. It can be very complicated, but I'm using this in a very general way so that I can paint a picture for you. I think that by adopting an approach which holds the high ground, which refuses to cede it, which does not become abusive, it doesn't become vengeful, it doesn't become mob-like, but it manages to maintain that positive, strong, assertive, grounded, authoritative ground. I think that this will do us good because it will hold us accountable for everything that we've accomplished in the last 3 years through these battles and through these fights. And we owe that to ourselves. We need to be accountable for what we have achieved. Because if we don't hold ourselves accountable, you know for certain those on the other side that refuse to hold themselves accountable are going to steamroll us. And I've seen this happen in specific cases with specific individuals that I know who are wonderful people who have been intimidated and threatened and in some cases simply bribed into joining with the other side because there is no acute issue today. And as we hopefully have learned, if we've learned nothing else for this entire day, this is not an acute issue. This is not something that peaked and is now going down, that we could potentially just put in our rearview mirror. That event, whatever you want to call it, describe it, between 2020 and 2022, as Dennis Prager likes to say, was nothing more than a dress rehearsal for tyranny. We have been through the dress rehearsal. We have been tested. Some have succeeded and passed the test, and others have failed. But we have to acknowledge that the theater season is only just beginning. And we need to be present. We need to be there in the audience, calling out and holding accountable the actors, and also holding us and ourselves accountable for what we've accomplished so far. If we just pack up and go home, or we just say, well, the other side has changed, I'm sure they're going to do the right thing next time, they will not. So I want to expand this definition and this understanding of accountability to not just include holding other people's feet to the fire and demanding that justice be had, because we may not really achieve that goal. It may not be possible. And the reason for that is we don't have a good mechanism right now for achieving truth, because the people, the oppressors and the victims, are not in alignment with the goal that truth is something to be sought for. So if that doesn't happen, if the worst case scenario continues and we don't make any improvements on the other side, we can at least focus on our side. And my hope, my wish, is that that will help protect us from the next battle and also steer us towards the right direction for the next war. It's trite to say, but I often tell my patients this, tell my parents as well, that you can't ever control what the other side does or what other people do to you. You can only control your reaction to it. And we need to always remember that our reaction, holding ourselves accountable in a positive way for what we've done, what we're doing now, what we can accomplish in the future, is our responsibility alone. And to not inadvertently begin colluding with those who have, who are, and who continue to wish to harm us. Thank you.